Welcome into Deep Waters, where we take a deep dive into all things boxing here at ProBox TV. Look, we all know what happened last Saturday. It was Tyson Fury, Alexander Usyk. Usyk coming home with not just a unified heavyweight title, but also a pound-for-pound ranking. A lot of people put him at absolutely #1. Now, what is the future? Not just, of course, the rematch we all expect with Tyson Fury, Alexander Usyk, but what is the future of the heavyweight division? To help me break that down, Jimmy Smith is alongside Paulie Malignaggi, Chris Algieri, Teddy Atlas, all joining me via Zoom. Chris, let's start with you. When you look at the Frank Warren Eddie Hearn 5 versus 5 tournament in Saudi Arabia, we're going to have Filip Hrgovic taking on Daniel Dubois, also Deontay Wilder versus Zhilei Zhang. Do you think a future contender or star comes out of that fight?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the heavyweight division is really healthy. Even our second tier guys are exceptional fighters. I mean, I think Hrgovic is fantastic. I've called his fight against Zhilei Zhang a few years ago. That was an excellent back and forth fight with big action, a lot of punches thrown, a lot of output from both men, even for big guys. We got guys who are actual super heavyweights, which is the modern era types size in these guys who are fighting. So we got that Hrgovic fight with Daniel Dubois, and Daniel Dubois, he faltered against Usyk, but there was some controversy in that fight. And then, he looked great against Jarrell Miller. I mean, he showed tremendous power. I was surprised at how powerful Dubois looked, and it made me rethink Daniel Dubois' status in the heavyweight division. So this is a big fight for both these guys. Daniel Dubois is one of those guys where if you want to get to the upper echelon, you got to be able to get by him.
Paulie, when you look at this division, are we too quick to write off Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, the guys that have losses to Usyk, but still skilled, still big for the weight class? What are your thoughts on writing off the people who have just lost? Are they still very much in the mix to you?
Yeah, I don't think the problem is writing off the people that have lost. Maybe Dubois a little bit has gotten a lot of slack. I remember he was sort of looked at as one of the future horsemen, to use the term Chris the Champ mentioned, out of the heavyweight division. But then after the Joyce fight, he's kind of been demoted sort of to like gatekeeper of the elite of the weight class. But aside from that, I don't think anybody's really writing off Fury and Joshua. My problem with the heavyweight division is they don't let the new blood in. Like Hrgovic has been waiting for a shot at something for a while, even though he's won an eliminator, and now he's about to fight what I assume is another eliminator against Dubois, or maybe for a vacant title. Something I'm hearing various reports there. But that's my issue. You keep trying to recycle the same names, and those names are still good. But you know what? You got to also let the rest of the heavyweight division sort of keep moving in, and let the influx come in. You got guys like Jared Anderson who become sort of an enigma. I think it's about time he gets a shot. It's a dump or get off the pot type of time for Jared Anderson. He's either going to be somebody or he's not. So he's got to get in there with somebody. So again, I want to see that new blood moving. And of course the guys who are still in there. I don't think Anthony Joshua is on his way down. I think Anthony Joshua has actually had a resurgence since hooking up with Ben Davidson, and he looks terrific. As a matter of fact, the winner of Hrgovic and Dubois against Joshua sounds like a really, really great fight to me. A fight that really gets me excited. So I think there's the Andy Ruiz is still around. I think he's mentioned against fighting Jarrell Miller. Miller is, again, Miller is one of those guys that maybe you write off. But again, you have to wonder with Miller because, with the PEDs, he looks so great and pre-failing PEDs, should I say, pre-failure of the PED test. He looks so conditioned for such a big guy. You wonder, like, how does this guy carry around all this weight and throw so many punches, and well, then we got our answer, but since then, the Dubois fight, he really looked very, very average. He got stopped at the very end of that fight. So, he's one of those guys that maybe you start to look at and say, okay, maybe the losses do count against him. But again, he comes back and gets a win over Ruiz. Who knows? Because Ruiz has been out for a while, and we've been waiting for Andy Ruiz to sort of show us what this new not dad bod looks like. He was the dad bod champ before, and now he's sort of lost the weight. He's posted about how he's lost the weight. I want to see how this Ruiz looks against Jarrell Miller, who seems to still feel like the dad bod might work for him. Either way, you can go in a lot of different directions with the heavyweight division. Make some fun fights as long as they're fighting each other. That's my issue with boxing is the fighters that are inside the group circle of trust, like to take a line out of Meet the Parents. The fighters that are in the circle of trust want to just play with each other, and then a lot of times they don't let the guys who are out of the circle of trust get into the room and play too. And that's the issue I've had with Hrgovic not getting a shot.
Every business has a CEO. We forget the CEO in our business is the fans. If the fights demand it, if the action, screams that we want to see it again, we got to see it again. You know, that's what happened with Ali and Frazier, and that's part of why they are where they are, and why Ali is where he is. Of course, he went on with the Foreman fight and everything else, but I mean, that is really what set the table for his greatness. Is that he didn't do it once; he did it 3 times, and each one was their own story, you know. And each one they left a piece of themselves, unfortunately, in the ring. You know, you got to suffer to be great, and they suffered, unfortunately, to be great. But we're still speaking about them because of that suffering, because of that greatness. You know, I I think there's new blood coming. See, I had a ringside seat. I happened to see some guys that haven't really been put out there yet. And one of them was Agit Cabriel. And he knocked out Frank Costello. Costello was Frank
Sanchez.
Sanchez. I'm sorry. Yeah. Frank Sanchez was a guy, a Cuban fighter, big guy, 24-0, and people were touting him. They were touting him as, you know, the next guy in line. And this was a title eliminator. And Cabriel took him, systematically took him apart. As you can see, yeah, he went to the body. He went to the body. He broke him down from the first round to the 7th round and then stopped him with body shots. There's something about this guy, Gabriel, something special.
Teddy, I know you know about the future of the heavyweight division. Maybe that name will be there soon, but right now it's a division that might be aging out of greatness. How much time do we have left in this era of heavyweights? We tackle that when we come back to Deep Waters.
Wednesday Night Fights. On the next Wednesday Night Fights, May 22nd, Batajan Jukambayev faces Ivan El Terrible Redkach. Wednesday Night Fights.
That's right. We head out tomorrow for Wednesday Night Fights, a showdown at 140 pounds. Speaking of divisions that are red hot, 140 certainly is, but we're discussing the heavyweights. That's right. And the timing of how long this heavyweight division will last. Why so many fighters on the dark side of 35 and the ones that aren't are very, very close. Anthony Joshua, 34. Deontay Wilder, 38. Fury about to turn 36. Usyk, 37, says he's going to retire by the time he is 40. So the window of this era of heavyweight closing. Chris, how long do you think, you talked about the 4 horsemen, the 4 people at the top, they are all getting long in the tooth. How long do you think this era lasts? What do you think they can give to the next generation? Your thoughts?
You know, Jimmy, I'm gonna give a response that you might not expect. I think this era is gonna last as long as Prince, Prince Turki Al-Sheikh is around. Yeah. I think as long as Prince Turki Al-Sheikh is around, this era is going to continue. Just like Paulie said earlier about the circle of trust fuckers. There's a lot of guys just outside of that who are very, very talented. And we don't know how good they are because they haven't had their opportunity yet. But when you've got Turki Al-Sheikh, who is making these fights happen, and these heavyweights are able to fight each other, and they're fighting consistently. We had 2 years, 18 months to 2 years, where there was almost no heavyweight fights going on. Now, we're getting guys who are fighting 3-4 times a year. That's never happened. So we're going to see this talent rise. And I know the names that you're talking about, Jimmy, they're starting to age out. They're talking about retirement. They're getting up there in terms of getting long in the tooth. But I think there's a whole crop of young guys out there we just haven't seen yet. There's a ton of talent all around the world. And with the opportunity and the platform that's being put out there right now, I think this era is going to last.
Guess who's back in the circle of trust, guys? The heavyweight division.
When you look at it, Paulie, as you said, you got to let those new guys in. To be the man, you got to beat the man. That means the ones coming up have to get those opportunities. Do you think His Excellency Turki Al-Sheikh, that money could make that next generation come up and get that opportunity? What are your thoughts?
Well, that's what I hope. You know, what I've noticed about Turki Al-Sheikh, he likes big names. He likes to attract big stars, big names. But I also hope that he has the mindset to allow the secondary upper tier, the younger guys who were, you know, a big threat to the top guys, will allow them into the mix, into that, again, not to keep beating on a dead horse, into that circle of trust to where they can actually get the shot at the top guys as well. And the wheel keeps turning. I think that's the important thing about boxing is when The generations keep moving. The wheel keeps turning. Top guys keep fighting each other until they move on. The younger guys come in and start to take out some of those top guys. It's just a natural progression of every weight class. And when you don't have it, when you have guys who are avoiding fights, and when you have guys that try to avoid that with those next generations, they create log jams in those weight classes, and you have problems. So I hope that Turki Al-Sheikh, who I love the fact that he loves these big names. I love the fact that he wants to make these big fights, but I also hope that he has the presence of mind to understand how each weight class has to move, including the heavyweight division, so that these guys coming up right behind these top guys get their proper shot, and the wheels keep turning, and you're not recycling name fighters who get to the point where they're shot, but they're still being used. And one more thing, man, with Turki Al-Sheikh, I hope he does keep bringing these fights, bringing this money, but I also hope that he starts having the presence of mind to put them into hemispheres like Europe and North America, where the atmosphere it's just bananas for these big fights, and then because sometimes you're not getting the atmosphere in Riyadh and Saudi Arabia the way you would in these mega arenas in the Western Hemisphere.
Well, what's your thought on it, Ted? You've seen a lot of era of heavyweights. How long do you think this, with the top four, once again, being in at least their mid-30s, how long do you think this era lasts?
You always have to have new blood. I mean, you have to bring them in. You have to bring them in at the right time. That's really what it is. It's no different than a baseball team or a football team that's been a dynasty. We're going to say this heavyweight division is a dynasty, right? Just for the sake of an argument, we'll call it a dynasty. You see the teams that go on, whether it's the Patriots or whether it's in baseball, the Yankees, or, basketball, the Lakers, or, whoever it happens to be. The teams that go on are the ones that they transist players at the right time. They bring them in. They replace the older guys. They bring them up to the farm system. That's the amateurs in our business. They bring them up and they start to replay. They don't get rid of all the old guy, but they start to put a couple of them in there. And then the dynasty continues. Same thing with the heavyweight. You want the heavyweight division to continue to be healthy? Well, there's two things. Bring in some new blood. Keep bringing them in at the right time, mixing them in there, and keep making good fights. That's the thing. Keep putting competitive fights on. And to the point earlier, one of the champions talked about, some of the guys coming up like a Jared Anderson. He's got a lot of fights. He was a good amateur. Put him in there with the guy I mentioned before that caught my eye, Agid Kabiel. Put him in. And then the winner of that, they get to go in there with the big boys. They get to go in there with the established guys. And then again, you keep it fresh. You keep it going. The vegetables don't get old. The fruit don't get old. You gotta mix in the new fruit with the old fruit. I'm a little bit of cooking.
When it comes to the new fruit, which one is going to last? That is the question. Which one stays crisp? We'll figure out the next heavyweight contender when we come back.
Wednesday Night Fights. On the next Wednesday Night Fights, May 22nd, Batujan Jukambayev faces Ivan El Terrible Redkach. Wednesday Night Fights.
Welcome back into Deep Waters here on ProBox TV. We are discussing the Deep Waters that is the heavyweight division right now. Look, we know who's at the top. We know the four kings. Right now, it is Deontay Wilder. We have Usyk. We have Anthony Joshua. We have still Tyson Fury coming off a loss, still very much a factor. Now, outside of that, we have a slew of heavyweight contenders. My question to the panel is going to be, which heavyweight might break through in the next couple of years to become one of those four horsemen? Let's start with you, Paulie. When you talk about it, we have, Jared Anderson. We have Andy Ruiz Jr., serviceable heavyweight, Dubois, Zhang. Who breaks through maybe the next couple of years and becomes that next big contender or champion?
I'm not. There's not really one that's sticking out to me. I can't say. Jared Anderson has been hot and cold himself. I just need them to fight each other. I can't really say that there's one that's sticking out like, oh man, this guy's really the goods. Maybe this guy Teddy just mentioned. He's been getting a lot of hype over the internet and over in Europe. He's a big deal. Maybe he's something a little bit more special than the rest. But Jared Anderson has had a good solid come up as far as a prospect is concerned. But he's also shown some struggles that leave you to question whether he can be that heir to the throne of the heavyweight division. But the division is very, very well set up. I mean, you've got all kinds of top fighters there. You've got that middle ranged fighters as well, and you've got a pretty good top 15 overall. Even top 20. Not to say that somebody in the top 15 or 20 will beat the top guy, but nonetheless, you've got enough guys to make it fun. And then also, I really think that when you don't have a definitive guy who's next in line, but there's a lot of solid fighters around, the weight class can be fun as long as they're fighting each other, and that's what I hope to see. My hope is that, in all these weight classes, guys are fighting each other. We had a rare 1 versus 2 matchup in the heavyweight division over the weekend with Usyk and Fury, and we got one of the tremendous fights that we've seen in recent memory. Rarely do you see a 1 versus 2 matchup in any weight class, and that's the problem with boxing. Nobody wants to see the NBA Finals against the Western Conference winner pits the Western Conference winner against the loser in the Eastern Conference quarterfinals. Whoever makes the NBA Finals out of the West, nobody wants to see them play the Knicks. The Knicks just got eliminated by the Pacers. You know what I mean? But that's what boxing does. Boxing will give you like the number 1 guy against the 5th or 6th best guy, and then tell you, it's okay. Even though you know who's going to win, it's okay. You can deal with it. It's a good enough fight. It's for entertainment anyway. But when you get 1 versus 2, you get a nice matchup. I'd love for these solid, evenly matched fights to happen on a consistent basis. We do it at ProBox. We just don't have the budget to do like a Turki Al-Sheikh and match them up against one another at the elite level. But if you notice what's happening with Turki Al-Sheikh, it's consistently making fights that maybe wouldn't have been made before. Over the last weekend, if you really noticed, the heavyweight division had two upsets. It had Usyk upsetting Fury, and it had who's that guy? The guy who upset Frank Sanchez. Gabriel upsetting Frank Sanchez as well. You also had overall on that card, you had Joe Cordina getting upset, who's not a heavyweight, but in the lower division. On Saturday night on the top ranked card, you had 2 upsets with Norman Jr. upsetting Santian, and in the main event, Baranchuk beats Navarrete. So you can create drama and you can create new fans by consistently making the right matchups. I hope the heavyweight division, because it has enough good fighters in it, can keep making these matchups. And Turki Al-Sheikh is one guy who's been very, very interested in the heavyweight division. So at least for that weight class, it seems like the matchups can happen.
Chris, I know Usyk caught you by surprise a little bit. You weren't quite sure how he would do it. Heavyweight ends up being number 1. Who might be under the radar to the fans right now in the heavyweight division?
I got 2 names. I mean, one of them is Bakhodir Jalolov, Olympic gold medalist, super heavyweight. I got to see him on an undercard of a top ranked show. It wasn't aired on TV. The guy's 6'7". He's an Olympic.
The guy that beat Torres.
Yes, who beat Torres in the amateurs. He is fantastic. He almost has like a Bivol-esque style with that in and out. He's 6'7". He's got real power. He looks big. He's strong. He has a lot of potential. Obviously, he has the amateur pedigree. He's got the size for a super heavyweight. I think he's only 14-0 at this point, so he's got some time to develop. But that's the kind of guy I could see taking over the division in recent year and next couple of years coming up. But also, like, listen, we're talking about Alexander Usyk, right? So why don't we look south? Why don't we look at lower weight classes? How about a guy like Jai Opetaia? I think he struggles mightily to make cruiserweight. I felt like in that last fight this past Saturday, he started out strong. He's super athletic. But I could see in his face and his body, he cuts a lot of weight to make that cruiserweight limit. He probably was 215, 212 in the ring on fight night. He could easily pack on 10 pounds of hard muscle, be a 225 fighter, similar to how Usyk is. And he has the athleticism and hits hard enough that I think he can actually campaign at heavyweight and do quite well.
Well, the thing is that like a great man once said, you don't know what you got till it's gone. We know what we have here in the heavyweight division, but how good is it? We'll discuss it when we come back. Welcome back into ProBox TV's Deep Waters. We're discussing the heavyweight division. As the heavyweight division goes, so goes boxing. We've heard that for years. Now we've lived through some great eras of the heavyweight division. This one is outstanding. Chris, how much do we have to appreciate what we're going through right now, considering the heavyweight division not always the jewel? Could this lift boxing up to, mainstream greatness like it was before?
Well, I think it is. I think boxing is extremely healthy right now. And it has been even before the heavyweights came onto the scene. Because a couple years ago, we were kind of in a bad place. The big fights weren't happening. And then I think about 2 years ago, things really turned around. All the fights we wanted started to materialize. We still didn't have a heavyweight division. But then in comes His Excellency, Turki Al-Sheikh. And now the heavyweight division is alive and well. And we're getting these big fights. And to Champ, your point, like we're getting fights that are competitive. Like we don't know who's going to win. Vegas doesn't know who's going to win. So I think the health of the sport is always contingent on the heavyweight division, but it's been really strong even below that. But now you bring in the heavyweight division. I think this is the greatest era of my fandom as a boxing fan, because I think the 80s were great, but I was 4. I wasn't watching these fights the way I am now. But right now, what we have going on, I mean, boxing is alive and well, and I couldn't be happier.
I'm a little upset that you were that young. Paulie, I remember the 90s, a great era of heavyweight boxing. What are your thoughts on that comparison, and that it makes the sport of boxing more mainstream to have a great heavyweight division? What's your thought?
I think I agree there. You know, I think as the heavyweight division goes, the saying is boxing goes, and I think a fun heavyweight division will interest more and more people. I do think you need an American heavyweight that can insert himself so that the American audience gets more intrigued emotionally. I think fight fans in America and the UK, they love to watch the fights regardless. It would be nice to have an American heavyweight, sort of like we have with Wilder or a Holyfield or a Tyson or a Bo. We don't really have that right now. People talk about Anderson, but I don't know if he's going to live up to the same things that those guys did before him. So we'll see. But as far as I said years ago, and I caught a lot of slack for it, the Eastern Europeans are sort of starting to dominate more and more in the heavyweight division, especially the big guys. And it seems like even the future, based on the names that we mentioned for the future, is also seeming like Eastern European dominance is imminent. So I think for the American fan base in general, it would be cool to have a Western fighter, an American fighter, to also be up there and make it fun. But we'll see.
Teddy, very curious about that, about what Paulie said about you needing an American dominant heavyweight. You were a coach, a couple of those. What are your thoughts on that as far as elevating the heavyweight division?
Well, we had it in the 90s.
Yeah.
Listen, the main thing is to have a guy who catches your eye, who catches your imagination, and who fights good fighters. You know, we've had guys where there's no doubt about it. They would have been bigger stars if they were brought up maybe over here, especially if they spoke English. You know, people have said that about Canelo, but look how big he got. You know, they said, well, if he spoke English, he'd be, how much bigger would he be? I mean, you know, it's a matter of being able to have the fan base and be able to grow from that fan base and obviously catch the imagination of the public. Lomachenko, I remember and he learned how to speak English, but at first it was saying, oh my God, imagine how good if he learned how to speak English. He comes from the Ukraine, you know, it's going to be hard. No, it wasn't hard. The guy won divisions. The guy won in his third pro fight. He won. If you do sensational things, if you get in that ring and you produce, you know, that's all the fans ask for. They don't ask for anything else, anything beyond that. And I think it's the same thing here. Look, wherever you go, you're going to hear in different sports, you're going to hear certain names. You're going to hear the Dallas Cowboys. You're going to hear the Yankees. Those are names that are intertwined with the greatness of the sport. They have that brand. Well, the brand, if you will, of boxing would be the heavyweight division. So it's, yes, all this talk is for a reason, that we're dedicating this much talk to that division. That as the heavyweight, as Paulie said, as the heavyweight class goes, boxing goes. Boxing was not, it was starting to become less relevant. It was starting to shrink, almost like a cult type sport. It was, and then Turki Al-Sheikh came along and started making fights that unshrunk it, that allowed it to grow again, allowed it to be relative again. And then he finished, he put the cherry on top. He just finished last week by making one heavyweight champ. To keep that going, you have to continue to feed the heavyweight division. And they will. They will, as long as you make good fights.
Looks like we have them coming up in the heavyweight division right now. It's an exciting time to be a boxing fan. Join us next time on Deep Waters. Thank you so much for watching.